One. And we are recording on Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 5:10 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Tom Luongo, Mr. Alex Krainer, and Mr. Vincent Lanci, not Lance Vinci, because I got that wrong and I feel like a fucking idiot for that. But Tom, for all the new listeners, could you maybe introduce yourself and then Vince and then Alex?
Sure, I'm Tom Luongo, Gold Goats and Guns. I really the man, the myth, the legend. I don't know, whatever you want to say. And it was my idea to bring these two guys on with me today because Alex and I have done innumerable shows together, and Vince and I have done a couple of podcasts together. And I just thought it would be a great fun to have all of us in one room together and try and recreate that same, maybe a slightly different vibe than when we have the other bald ones on. That would be Callum and Kunstler.
Man, the myth, the legend, wherever you want to call him. Some people would call him convicted sex offender who can't own a gun, and it's his license. That's legally not true. That might also be slander. That might also be something I can't do.
Might be.
It might be.
But never convicted.
Never can. Hey, listen. It was, what's the line? It was international waters. They couldn't prosecute. Vince, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, Tom's taking responsibility for this. So if I'm speaking for myself and I'm going to go out for Alex, if this goes off the rails, it's Tom's fucking fault.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I own a Goldfix Substack, hedge fund manager, still manage money for a client or two, and just generally a finance guy, options, geopolitics, derivatives, and bullshit.
Yeah, all right.
There you go.
And Alex?
Sorry. So Alex Krainer, Croatian national living in Monaco, former hedge fund manager, author, founder of Krainer Analytics, and publisher of daily CTA Trend Compass reports. And a podcaster, I guess. Something like that. That's me.
A regular guest on all the right stations is the way I like to put it.
Right, regular guest on a variety of podcasts. I suppose.
Tom, are you a hedge fund manager? Have you ever managed a hedge fund?
No.
Why not? You're a disappointment to these two.
No.
Actually, I would consider. I would say actually that I'm the one whose soul is still clean. But
yeah, you bring great shame to my podcast, showing up with two hedge fund managers, and then you have no management yourself. You fucking disgrace.
He plays with test tubes.
Yeah, he does.
I used to.
Right?
I used to. Yeah, I used to. That was fun. I mean, that was a former life, right?
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
Full Ted Kaczynski.
My wife keeps getting angry at me that I won't get into mixing glazes for her pottery, and I'm like, oh no, I ain't doing it. I'm like, non-aqueous electrochemistry. I'm going to start now using words you guys don't understand. Non-aqueous electrochemistry is something, or materials is something I know I ever want to get into.
It doesn't sound like you understand them either, Tom.
I passed chemistry.
Oh, I do.
You can't fucking pull it faster on me. I passed chemistry. I know what snake oil you're selling. You fucking
non-aqueous. So non-aqueous materials, huh? So yeah, crystal field splitting in silicon dioxide matrices.
Well, listen,
you know all about that, right?
Only test tubes I do is out in a fucking log cabin with Ted Kaczynski trying to make some real change in the world. That's legally a joke. But what are we talking about aside from the fact of de-dollarization and the inevitable income of a thermonuclear holocaust after the opening shots of World War III, which I would imagine is coming any day now.
Right.
Tom,
I don't know about that. I don't know. I'll start this thing off. I know that de-dollarization is the thing, and I think we all absolutely. The three of us are seeing that because Vince and I just did a podcast on this very subject. Alex and I were just on Crypto Rich's podcast the other day. We were talking about what was the things that are happening in the global south. But the whole de-dollarization meme, honestly, I think is a little overbaked. And I think it's overbaked for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which, because that's what I like to call Davos wants, because they're openly now calling for the end of the dollar. And so now it's a matter of, okay, so let's amplify. They like to amplify the voices and the ideas that they want the world to believe in. So they're always in the reality creation business, these people. And so that's, not to say that de-dollarization isn't happening, isn't wanted by a great number of people, including, I would imagine, and I'll be honest with you, some people in the United States, because the world being the global reserve currency is a burden, and we don't have the balance sheet room to continue that burden. So, guys.
Do you think that's what we're seeing with the war then? If you want to jump on this, Vince, do you think that,
Yeah.
do you think we're trying to maybe launder this through a war? We just got out of Afghanistan 8 months later. We're essentially in a new war. Is that just, are we the permanent war economy? And do we maybe just need to lean into
No,
that
we
and
have
own
to
it?
be.
Yeah.
We have to be. That's definitely what's going on. But I just read this today. Am I nuts, or did we pull people out of Afghanistan to put them into Ukraine? Like, it's almost looking that way now. I don't see the links that some of you retarded people do, but I'm seeing them now. And
Pull what out and put what where?
like, I saw something about the same troops that were pulled out of Afghanistan, we pulled out of there, are the advisors in Ukraine. It's almost like we pulled them out knowing Ukraine was going to start.
Well, I mean, it might be in that, I think it's kind of speculated that like Delta Force was at like Kabul airport during the exfil. I interviewed a Marine that was at the airport while it was happening.
Right.
And, no, you'll never find out if special forces were there. I'm friends with some Delta Force guys. You'll never find out what the fuck they did. In that sense, technically, I would argue that they're probably in Ukraine, but because they're tier one. But that's not really that's not really special. Then, if we were in Madagascar, they would be the same guys there.
Right, I understand.
As a biology major, not with zero military experience, just my own caveat to that.
All right, as a quid pro quo thing, it's like you can't really prove that. Anyway, all right, so I guess the guy was just trying to get some clicks. The de-dollarization, the Ukraine, perpetual war in the Ukraine. Ukraine is a negotiating table for what's coming next. So the de-dollarization, which is overdone, I think, as Tom's saying, the dollar is going to continue to be the great reserve currency, the global reserve currency, but no one's going to care anymore. It's a label that will outlive its usefulness. Meaning, the BRICS and countries like that, you're going to start seeing global commodities trade in local currencies. So you're going to see oil and gold, but let's just stick with oil. Oil will trade in local currency because everyone wants to touch and trust the person they're tied to. So it's going to be very similar to a mercantilist economy backed by gold indirectly. But the dollar will remain. And to bring it to Ukraine, I think that the Ukrainian, maybe it didn't start this way, but this is where it is. The Ukrainian war is a war of attrition on both sides. Russia thinks the longer we're in it, we're going to be weaker. They're right. We think the longer they're in it, they're going to be weaker. Obviously, China wins in all this, right? That's the side. So it's really just like, who can be the weakest when we finally go to the table and negotiate on the new terms for the dollar in the world? So it's like a pre-Bretton Woods 3 or a pre-Plaza agreement. But perpetual war, it's totally in our interest to keep this going. I mean, Ukraine is Syria North. It's like, that's what it is. It's Vietnam for Europe now. They have to in themselves.
Alex,
on what? On de-dollarization?
I don't care. Whatever you want, man. I'm puppies.
Well, yeah, I'm of two minds about it. I think that de-dollarization is going to accelerate, but I don't think the dollar is going to go away. I think that it's a weird thing. It's not only the math of doing business, it's also the math of understanding value. And I think that everybody in the world understands dollar. When you tell somebody that barrel of oil is $80, that crude oil is $80 a barrel, everybody understands what that means. And I don't think that's going to change as a yardstick of value. It's not going to go away that soon because people are not that quick to adopt change. When the world in the Middle Ages changed from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals, I mean, the difference was dramatic in how much more useful the Arabic numerals were for all kinds of things, for accounting, for math, for calculations, for for learning how to calculate. Well, still, it took several centuries for Arabic numerals to completely displace Roman numerals. And so I think that measuring value in dollars, exchanging goods and services for dollars, is not going to go away that quickly. Even though, as I said, the de-dollarization process might accelerate. And the reason for that is, I mean, we just had the Eurasia Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, and one of the main items on the agenda is attracting the nations of the global south onto this new trading system that's not going to include dollars. So yeah, I think it'll be very, very difficult to predict exactly how things are going to go. But you know, let's not discount the psychological inertia of the fact that people are used to the dollars, that the fact that a lot of online trading systems that have been developed over the past 20 years are based on the dollar, that it would take, you know, changing those systems, getting everybody to get used to new systems, to recalculate to something else that you need to work out. What does it consist of? It's gold based. Yeah. Okay. What's the price of gold in which currency? In yuan and in renminbi and what? So I think we're stuck with the dollar. And then there's the third factor to it all, which I think is maybe most important, is that other currencies like the euro and the pound and the yen, which are not getting as much press coverage as the dollar is, are way worse. I mean, pound is going to zero, yen is going to zero, and euro is going to follow close also to zero. And I think that the dollar is going to be the last one to fall. And I think that ultimately the political transformation of the United States that is going to happen very probably with the next elections is going to maybe lead to and also a change in America's approach to the rest of the world, and quite possibly the United States joining the Eurasian integrations process rather than trying to manipulate it and control it on behalf of, you know, European imperial oligarchy.
Tom?
That's, well, Alex is singing my tune here. Like, that's like, I'll break out the song. I'm happy to hear somebody else actually say this, because that's what I think is also happening. And because it is that, right? This is so many of the you know, if you look at what's happening on Capitol Hill with the debt ceiling fight, it's very clear, and you look at what everything else is happening, it's very clear that, like, McCarthy's not lying. Speaker McCarthy's not lying when he says the Biden administration looks like they just want to default. Like, that's what they want to do, right? And that they're willing to take this all the way to the end. And I've been saying for months that that's exactly where we're going to wind up, and that eventually the bluff is going to have to be called. And there's going to have to be senators that cross the line and say, no, we're not going to default, and throw it on Joe Biden, who can veto it, and then they're going to have to override him so they can keep the country running. And Janet Yellen, they've got Janet Yellen, probably the worst communicator of all of them, out there trying to explain to everybody why it is that that the Republicans are wrong. We're all going to default. I mean, you'll listen to Yellen talk, and like, this is the woman who you couldn't find her phone number when she was running the San Francisco Fed or the Federal Reserve itself, because she didn't talk to anybody, because she ran it like an autocrat. And now all of a sudden
She's interviewing for a job.
Yeah, and now every day she's sitting there. Yeah, no, and now every day she's sitting there, like, you know, like she can't be on the Sunday talk show circuit enough. They got her out there every week, and she's setting foreign policy, and she's doing this, and like all this stuff. And the truth of the matter is that then you have Jamie Dimon goes out there today and goes, everybody get the idea of higher rates. Did you guys see the clip from Dimon when he was on Bloomberg this afternoon? Yeah. I mean, if that is not validating everything I've been saying for the last 2 years about Dimon and Powell running the table on the rest of the freaking world, I don't know what else you need to hear. Like, Dimon's like, we're going to do this. You've got the New York banks and the Federal Reserve singing from the same tune, saying we're going above 6%. Kari said this morning they're going above 6%. Bullard said at least 2 more rate hikes this year. All today, guys. All today. Well, the markets all stand there and go, no, you can't. No, you can't. Meanwhile, the SOFR futures curve is slowly but surely grinding out that there's going to be another rate hike in June and September now. We're getting really close to it. Now only a 25 basis point cut into September. But the June rate hike is baked into the pie. So de-dollarization is the American policy being set by European oligarchs is what's going on here. They want us to default because they're the only ones that benefit from any kind of turmoil in the United States. China doesn't benefit. It upsets global trade. The Russians don't benefit. The United States goes off half-cocked like Rambo without a jockstrap militarily if we blow up. No one benefits from this other than the weakest player at the table, which is the sick man at the table, which is the European Union.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. I've come a long way on that. I mean, without even looking at the British pound, which is going to zero because they can't be fiscally responsible if they want to, as Alex was implying. I mean, the euro still doesn't have fiscal unity, so how would they survive? So the dollar is the tallest, the cleanest dirty shirt, the tallest pygmy, whatever we're allowed to say.
Right.
I'm not sure.
All of those things and more.
Yeah, exactly.
The least offensively smelling pile of dog shit.
Right.
How's that?
That's why. That's by the way, on a plumbing note, I can now speaking of plumbing, right? On a plumbing note, you know what Alex said. I could add to from a plumbing perspective. You know, the dollar's not going away, right? It's going to last. Let's say it's another 50, 100 years. I disagree with that, but not wholeheartedly. What's going to happen is everything will be priced in dollars in name only, and incumbency is hard to break. I agree with you on that. I mean, you can't break electronic incumbency is actually even harder to break once it's in place. What's going to happen, and Tom and I talked about this recently, is the trade will dictate what exchanges do, and exchanges will create contracts for swap overs. So it'll be like I'm trading my dollars. Like we'll use oil as an example. If China wants to trade oil in yuan with Saudi Arabia, there's going to be a contract for that. And it'll be basically be a swap contract for dollars. So everything will still be on the screen in dollars, but local currencies will trade more. With regards to the U.S., you made another comment, Alex, that I want to speak to. I agree with you. There are so many platforms being made by these BRICS now, excluding the dollars. Right? It's not they're not dollar friendly. Let's put it that way. Right? So you've got your 4 regional hubs in Asia, and they're like, okay, I'm going to trade in rubles, you'll trade in yuan, and it's like this big X. It's called M Trade. There's a bunch of them, but M Trade is the one that I'm focusing on. And I looked at it and I analyzed it, and sitting in the fucking middle of the whole thing in Asia is the Bank of International Settlements. So I'm going to connect some dots here. De-dollarization, global trade will remain in dollars, or a basket of dollars backed in something with gold and maybe yuan or something like that. Regional trade will go in local currencies, especially in physical commodities. And then the BRICS get their platforms together, excluding the dollar, and then they invite the dollar in. And that's where the negotiation comes in. And the Bank of International Settlements is going to be the platform of platforms, basically. I think that's what's going to happen. And how do you trade on that? I don't know, but there'll probably be 2 worlds of trading, and only the banks will sit in between them. Anyway, so moving on.
No, that's good, Vince. I like that. Alex, what do you think? I want to hear what you have to say about that.
I don't know. Honestly, this M Trade, this is the first time I heard of this, so I can't really speak to that.
Okay.
I wanted to say something else, but It went poof. I'll get back to it when it comes
I'll
back.
throw you the link later, but M-Trade's one of many. We're talking about the car being invented here, and there's a bunch of different car makers. But the reason I focused on M-Trade is because Zoltan Pozar mentioned it. So I saw a 3-minute video on it. It's basically an internal sales pitch, and you've got 4 Asian regions. So you got PBOC, you've got Taiwan, you've got, I think, Hong Kong, and another one might be Indonesia. I'm not sure. And that's like this regional thing. And you have this, it's basically it's a 2-minute video, and there's a platform. And what they're doing is they're talking about using a blockchain product. It's done. They've already done it. Oil has been traded, and you could probably confirm this. Well, maybe you can't confirm it, but you can understand that oil has been traded in gold-backed yuan since 2017. Now, that may be surprising to hear so definitively, but I traded wet barrels back then. We called it wet barrels still. I was trading physical, and I was dealing with a trader out there. And he said, "What do you think about, Bitcoin?" I was like, I know what it is. I don't know, And he said, "Well, we did like $3 billion worth of oil in blockchain between Russia and China with yuan with like a gold embedded option in it." I went, okay, all right, whatever. But anyway, fast forward, this M-Trade platform is that. It's a version of that. But the point is that I'm trying to agree with what you said about the dollar. This is not a dollar platform, but in the middle is the fucking BIS, and the BIS, like Europe may not survive, but the BIS will, that's what's going on. So eventually, whether it doesn't have to be M-Trade, Alex, whether it's M-Trade or it's some other product out there, they're all making their little territorial things, and they're all trying to cut deals. What did Russia say recently? They said to the Indians, "We're not going to take rupees, we want to take yuan." That's because there's gold involved, or maybe because India is not totally committed to the idea yet, because they're going to have a big foot in both camps when it's over. Anyway, long story short, the dollar gets invited to the table. How strong it gets invited to the table, I think, depends on Ukraine. Like, if Russia destabilizes tomorrow, let's take it to an extreme, right? Russia destabilizes tomorrow. China shits its pants because you have a nuclear power on your border. I'm going to an extreme. I'm not saying it's
right.
Right. China's like, oh shit, we have a nuclear power on our border that's becoming fragmented and warlord-like. It's not happening, but you can see how that can happen, right? Europe's like, oh fuck, we've got Russia, on our border, like freaking out. The Middle East is like, we're not happy about that, but we get our weapons from the U.S. anyway. And then the U.S. people want the dollar again. So if I'm an American neocon lunatic who wants to preserve the dollar at all cost, I want Russia to collapse,
right?
And or get close to it. So Europe goes, we'll give you Belgium. You can have Belgium. Just please come over, and you can have all the beer you want. And then Europe becomes a colony of the U.S. Russia, and so Russia becomes the bad man, and all of a sudden China's like, okay, we'll be peaceful with Europe, and we'll all push up against Russia. I mean, it's kind of like a Hillary Clinton fantasy. You know what I mean?
It is. I don't, and I think it's, but the thing is, that's what the neocons think they're going to get if that happens.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not what Davos thinks is what's going to happen.
I think
Davos thinks that what's that? Davos thinks that they're going to destroy the United States in the process, and just leave our military to enforce their will around the world. Like, they want European Union, they want all the trading rules of the European Union overlaid on everything. The European Union is the model for our future.
Right.
It politically, organizationally, okay, the trade rules and everything else. Go look at, like, that's what like GDPR is all about. And now they're fining Facebook $1.3 billion for violating that. What do you think that is? That's nothing more than trying to establish, basically international taxing authority the same way that the United States has for all these years, by fining people for violating FATCA or whatever it is, right? This is the way they operate. So Congress is using the neocons for this purpose, and they do want to destabilize Russia because they know that that's how they can subjugate China. Because
Right.
without Russia, there is no independent China. But Russia and China together, especially them with Iran, like that's game over, and they know that's game over. And this is what Alex and I were talking about on Saturday about Pakistan. But just to like go take it back into the geopolitical realm again, and where the Ukraine is not just the only negotiating point here, because Pakistan is another big piece to this. So is Syria. Now, Syria is for the most part over, but it's still not a done deal. So, because if you don't stabilize Pakistan, right, then there is no overland trade route connecting China with the rest of Central Asia. You don't collapse Mackinder Heartland / Brzezinski / Wolfowitz doctrine, basically the last 160 years of British foreign policy. You don't collapse that without Pakistan. That's why they arrested Imran Khan. That's why the U.S.-backed Pakistani military did what they did recently, and why they're trying to stop the civilian government from actually gaining control over the institutions in Pakistan. They're afraid of them because they lose Pakistan, they lose everything. Then India stops becoming recalcitrant, which is part of the reason why, as you brought up, Vince, the Russians said to India, we're not particularly crazy about rupees because y'all are still got, you got a foot on both. You're a man with a foot on two islands.
Did you say y'all?
So, yeah, I did. I'm from the South. I'm from the South now, dude. Like, and Lincoln was a tyrant too, by the way. But
My God.
I think the big money in this world wants a Cold War. I don't think we want Ukraine to end. Because if Ukraine ends and we're arguing that we're a permanent war economy, well, then we have to go somewhere else. And why would we want to go somewhere else when we just started this party? I honestly think if we're looking at it like permanent war, World War I, that's all well and good. World War II, Vietnam, war on terror, that's all pussy shit compared to Cold War. That was 4.5 decades. I think they want a new Cold War. I don't think they want.
Oh, they absolutely do.
Yeah, I mean, like a real cold, not in name. I mean, they want a new Red Menace, and where you just don't bat an eye at programs like SDI, and you're either with us or against. I think they want that, man. Nothing was more profitable than the Cold War. It was a war that cost more than anything else, and you didn't even actually have to fire bullets.
It's an employment boom, right?
Yes, I don't think I'm not even kidding. I think we want Russia and China and all of them to pair up into a new evil menace, and then it's us, and then you get 4.5 decades of Cold War.
So do we want Ukraine to end or
no,
not?
not at all. No, we want it to get bigger. That's why we're sending F-16s. We want China to go in Taiwan, and you're with us or against us. And America looks like shit, but in face of a Cold War,
but the poor people in this room, we don't want Ukraine to end. We do want Ukraine to end. We want the Russians to take Odessa, and we want this thing to end.
Well, we're normal, rational humans who aren't trying to pit the world into global war. I mean, that's a given. I'm talking about the demons inside of some nuclear bunker that are looking at it like a chessboard.
But what I'm getting at is if you look at the Cold War, the Cold War is a skirmish war every decade. Vietnam, Korea, Vietnam.
Yeah,
so
right.
What I'm getting is the Cold War is, Ukraine. Like Ukraine is. So I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying, if that ends, we're going to fight another war.
Well, there has to be another one that's starting before we end this one. I get what you're saying.
Right.
So we either got to go invade Mexico to get the cartels, Cold War, they're funded by China, doesn't need to make sense, or we got to go defend Taiwan. But you got to get the next party started before we shut this one down. And
if Ukraine ends, Ukraine ends, we're invading Venezuela.
No, Ukraine ends only if something else is started. That's what it has to go. I mean, look at what we did between leaving Kabul and going into Ukraine. That was 7 months of not knowing what to do with our hands. Like we produce missiles. That's what we do. We napalm people and nuke them from orbit. That's what we do. We don't know what to do when that isn't there. So it's like a gap in a workout playlist. The song just pauses and you're just sitting there grunting. No, you want the music to continue. So we're either going to invade Mexico and say it's China or some other horse shit, or China's going to go bomb Taiwan. But we want to get this party started. And
did you see the other day that there were, I can't remember which, it was some Republican senator that it was time for us to bomb the TSMC factory in Taiwan.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, no, we're getting this thing started.
Right.
Yeah, no,
okay.
We're going to conveniently find a bunch of documents.
Scorched earth before it even starts.
Yeah.
That's your
Well,
point.
well,
Yeah.
we're already sending Taiwan weapons, right? So we're kind of laying the groundwork. You can see it coming from
Absolutely.
a mile
Yeah,
away.
yeah, it's the same. Well, yeah, it's the same as the 8 years of the Minsk agreements and everything else.
Yeah, and
So
there's a reason why, even though we probably know because we're the ones that probably released it there, but we know that COVID came from Wuhan. Reason why it hasn't been released is because we're convenient. That's our ace. That's our trump card. We're gonna keep this Cold War going, and if everything else fails, well, then we're gonna pull out the big dick card. We're gonna say 7 million people died around the world because of China. We know that they did it. We're just waiting
Right.
for when we should use that card.
So the title of that movie is "In Case of Peace, Do This," or "If Peace Breaks Out."
Yeah, God forbid peace breaks out.
If peace breaks out, drop the Wuhan card.
Yes, no, it's the big one. You don't want to use it too soon, right? And it's
Right.
so everyone can't even imagine it. It's racist to say China did it. That's the hand we have. That's the general whispering in the president's ear. If
Right.
all else fails, we can pull this out. They probably already have the press conference written. I mean, Nixon had a speech written for the astronauts dying on the moon. It was already written. It's already prepared. It's already for that situation. I mean, Eisenhower had the czar system. He had speeches written talking about which people were going to be taking over the automotive industry in the wake of a nuclear war. All this stuff's
Right.
prepped and ready to go. That's what.
Well,
Right, it's all gamed out.
Yeah.
well, that's why we were talking about Alex. We were talking about this the other day, right? That the story about the F-16s being given to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're finally going to send F-16s to Ukraine.
Yeah.
No, they were already there.
Yeah.
Pilots are already trained.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians were sent over here a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or to Europe a year ago.
I think in 2014 we were probably like, yo, this war on terror can't go on forever. So let's go over and get in Ukraine.
No, they knew it. They knew in 2014 that Russia was going to move into. Well, no, they weren't. They didn't know that. They didn't know that in 2015 Russia was going to move into Syria.
Yeah.
Putin kept his hand completely hidden.
And that's why we left $80 billion of MRAPs over in Afghanistan, because we're getting ready for the next Soviet invasion of the next Cold War. So instead of having to aid the rebels, we preemptively did it. It just goes forever. Once you boil it down to that, and it's very depressing. But I mean, really, once you start to realize that it's all just like trade lines and military contractors, it becomes pretty predictable what's going to happen.
Well, but the one thing I want to say about this, Tommy, is that I think at this point, a lot of people, too many people see this hand at this point. And you can only do that when you have the balance sheet room to continue to lever this thing up. And deficits spend all. When you run out of the balance sheet to do this stuff, then you either have to transfer the production from one country to the next, from the British Isles to the Americans. Now the Americans are out of balance sheet room. Europe is out of balance sheet room. The Brits are out of balance. Who's gonna fund the next round of weapons? Who's gonna fund the next round of this? There is none left. I honestly think this is the crescendo. This is why this debt ceiling fight is different than before, and why this next iteration of this thing. I think everybody at this point understands the name of the game, and they're getting off they're getting off that train.
I entirely agree with you, Tom. And there's another big problem in the Cold War scenarios is that the Cold War that we had in the past was actually a fake one. It was real, but the rivalry was fake.
Yeah.
At the very top of the pyramid.
Didn't we give them nuclear secrets right after World War II?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they were, like as soon as one side got an advantage in weapons technology, they would share the technology with the other side, so they would match them. So like they were bilking the populations.
Yeah.
And the rivalry, at the very top level was contrived. It wasn't real.
Yeah.
And the actual top level elites, or not elites, the scumbags, the parasites, control the game at the very top, both sides.
Yeah.
The problem is that this is no longer the case. So Vladimir Putin and his cabinet, they're for real. And I keep hearing this like, oh no, he's the WEF puppet. They're all in it together. I haven't heard any really serious evidence of this. This is just conjecture, because he was part of the WEF. oh, therefore he's loyal to them, and because he shook hands with Klaus Schwab, oh, there's your proof. And because he was tight with Henry Kissinger in the early days of his presidency, whatever, you have your adversaries, you talk to them, you're close to them, you keep them close, you want to understand their agenda, you want to know how to position yourself vis-a-vis them, what the threats are, what the game is. So you have to talk to them. You can't just like build a big wall and assume that you understand the blows that are coming your way. Anyway, so that all changed, and not only did it change, Russia apparently has such advantage in weaponry today that at the most optimistic, it'll take the West at least 5 to 10 years to catch up with their hypersonics. It's not just hypersonics, it's the electronic warfare, which apparently the West cannot match. It's the radar systems, which the West has no answer to. And all these weapons are now being prepared for exports. So there's like nations of the world, the global South, is lining up to order the radar system, the missile system, the air defense systems, and so forth. And so this changes the balance of power, and Russia and China are not joking around. And Vincent, you were very right to say that China cannot allow for Russia to be destabilized, because if you look at the genesis of the Nazification of Ukraine, you realize that if Russia got destabilized, the same process could be started in Russia, and then to turn Russia into an enemy of China with all that weaponry. So in 2014,
they do have history. They're not best friends. They're friends by convenience now.
They do have that history, and there are voices in Russia. The sixth column that we discussed on Sunday with Tom, that are already busily writing on Telegram and on the social media that actually China is the enemy. Like we have to control. I'm talking about Russians pointing at China as the enemy, and that we have to prepare for that. So if if for some reason Vladimir Putin's government got destabilized, and then you started having the communists and the nationalists and the various Alexei Navalny's vying for power, and God knows in a few years maybe Western powers managed to install their own Vladimir Zelensky in power. It would take a couple of years for them to Nazify Russia and to persuade the Russian population that China is the devil, and to do exactly what they've done with Ukraine vis-a-vis Russia, to do with Russia against China. So Russian and Chinese alliance is for real, it's for keeps, and they both see it as existential. And I'll just wrap this up, because it's not aimed at United States per se. It's aimed at the imperial oligarchy. And I just listened to an interview today with the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, who said exactly what I suspected was the case. And he was talking about basically that their window of opportunity is 2024. They're scared shitless.
Wait, hold on. Who's they? Who's they?
Well, he's the head of. He's the former head of MI6. So when I say they, I think that he represents this imperial oligarchy in London.
That's what I want to know.
He's the former boss of Christopher.
No, I know he is. I really wanted to know if you meant they representing the oligarchy, or he's speaking for China and Russia.
No. They are representing the oligarchy. They're very, very worried that when they lose the Biden administration in the House, the days of them wielding the United States political, military, diplomatic power around the world are over.
Yes.
And that the next lineup, probably with Donald Trump in charge, is going to, I think, make peace with Russia and China, probably join Eurasian integrations as a business partner, and do business with this massive chunk of world trade, because why not?
Mhm.
And so they're dead worried about this, and it's not the end of U.S. hegemony; it's the end of the imperial project, and you're going to be left with Great Britain, with a band of zealots representing them in the EU, with Canada, maybe Australia, probably not New Zealand, and that's going to be it.
Yep.
And they're going to be surrounded on all sides. It's just going to be, a house of cards coming down.
Alex, thank you. That was awesome, because it dovetails with what I'm about to say, which is this to add to that, which is that, think of it this way, guys. They're scared shitless. When Trump came to power, they lost political control of the United States. Let's break it down to like very basic elements here. You can have, in order to control a country, you need both political and economic control. You need control of the central bank, and you need control of the political process, right? So if you own the legislature and or the executive, and you own the central bank, then you can have continuity of or coordination of policy at an international level. This goes back to what I've been saying about central bank policy in the wake of Lehman Brothers, when I said that the dollar reserve standard ended in 2011 when they birthed the coordinated central bank policy in September of 2011. They broke the gold bull market. The United States lost their AAA rating, but they created a $500 billion trust fund between all the major central banks to coordinate policy. In the issue of the newsletter I just published, I went ahead and I went to the St. Louis Fed, and I got the real broad effective exchange rates for the yen, the euro, the yuan, and the dollar. And I just published them from the birth of Abenomics to today. And what you see is very, very clearly that during that period, the yen was trashed under Abenomics to bring it in line with the rest of the other currencies. The dollar started a bull market, which has not ended, by the way, in real effective broad exchange rate. Dollar's been in a bull market since 2011, possibly earlier. I haven't gone back to look at it, but just from this point forward. But that bull market was, leveled off during the ZIRP year, right? And then the yen came down, the dollar rose, everything stayed sideways, and then all four of those traded in a very, very tight band until June of 2021, when Powell raised the reverse repo rate 5 basis points above the Fed funds rate, started self-tightening, the yen got trashed, the dollar started to take off, and now the currency exchange rate control of the exchange rates blew apart, and now is blowing apart rapidly. Okay, and I didn't put the pound in there because after a while I'm like, there's four currencies is enough. You can't see data once you've got more than that's even almost too many. So that's the period we're in now. We're in the breakdown period now. And yes, they are scared shitless of this. They don't have control of the Federal Reserve because the Federal Reserve blew up the coordinated central bank policy.
You guys, hey Vince, you're muted.
Could have blown everything out. And there it is.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
The G7 central banks got married in 2011 and divorced in 2021.
Yep.
And now, and I'm sure Europe is trying to get the old girlfriend back is dating the old girlfriend again, but is trying to make sure that she stays in office. Anyway, I don't want to.
We're gonna get some crazy sex tapes, is what.
Well, no, but Vince, you're not wrong. And if they can't get the Federal Reserve under control, notice that we go back to Janet Yellen. Yellen is trying to do an end run around Fed policy by setting policy, as you and I discussed on the podcast I did a couple of weeks ago, doing yield curve control. She's trying to reinstate QE around the
right.
Federal Reserve by doing yield curve control. And the last one of the major central banks to continue the old policy is the Bank of Japan. And Ueda has made it clear he's going to end yield curve control, but it's going to be on his time. He doesn't have to yet because
Right.
right now the Japanese 10-year continues to be underneath the cap of 0.5%.
Right.
It's trading at 38 basis points this afternoon. I looked it up this afternoon.
Well, when everyone is dead in Japan, they won't have to worry about inflation, because they're all dying anyway, and they're not.
Right.
I'm
Right.
making a joke, but
I know.
but, I mean, that's the thing. By the way, there is one central bank still working with the U.S., and I'm comfortable saying this, and that is Japan. So the curve control thing, I just want to throw this out there. People are going to start talking about it more and more, and I'm not sure how technically literate people are, but the yield curve control thing is QE, right?
Yes.
And it's quantitative easing at the back end of the curve. And so what they'll do, like they did in Japan, when they stop it in Japan, we'll probably start it here. And so if you have inflation, well, let's just stay on point. If Yellen gets her way, we get yield curve control. Okay, so the Davos appeasing wing of the U.S. government uses yield curve control to make the Davos people happy. If we get Trump or a conservative in there, or someone who's just not of the Davos ilk, we might have just straight inflation crushing behavior, and that would hurt Europe more. Anyway.
Okay. But on that point, the yield curve control, I think, is still bailing out the ECB and their attempts at yield curve control.
Oh,
because the short, and so it's actually helping. Yeah, it's helping. It's Ueda is.
You mean the Japanese yield curve control is bailing out the ECB?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to think the way you did about this. I used to think that it was the Bank of Japan being the Fed's wingman when it came to manipulating the dollar. In recent months, though, it's become clear to me when I look at the TIC report, right, and the flow of treasuries around the world, U.S. treasuries around the world.
Right.
Japan and China and Asia Pacific have been selling, net sellers, and the whole Eurozone system have been buying. And they're buying. What are they buying? They're buying the long end of the curve in order to manipulate credit spreads and to keep. They got to do something to keep the euro from collapsing. And the main reason they have to keep the euro from collapsing is because of oil prices. They can't allow the oil to get more expensive in euro.
Right.
So
during okay, so let's see if I can wrap my head around this.
This one's complicated.
No, well, I just want to make sure that I'm articulating it right.
Sure.
Right. So generally speaking, when the yen was weakened, debased right before they started the yield curve control, that wasn't so much to make the dollar stronger as it was to make the euro stronger. In a sense, it lowered.
In a sense, when we were at the zero bound, it just crushed everything into place. But now that we're off of this, leaving yield curve control in place is allowing Lagarde to manage the decline in credit spreads of European sovereign debt, because now the Fed's raising interest rates and Lagarde is trying to blunt the rise of European debt yields at the same, so that they don't just blow out. Because if the Japanese were to end yield curve control tomorrow and allow the 10-year to go to 2%, German 10 years would be at 6% overnight.
It's like a big daisy chain, basically. Yeah. So or hide the P, on their countries. So while we're raising, Japan is facilitating Europe's continued existence. The ECB.
Basically, I think it's helping. I think it's helping the ECB manage credit spreads. That's why I've been desperately watching for a while now, the U.S. German 2-year and the U.S. German 10-year spread, and they're both been collapsing. Meaning Germany, was trading at a much bigger premium on both of those, on both the short end and the long end of the yield curve, the U.S. debt for a long time. At one point, German 10 years were 0.4%, and the German 2-year was negative 0.9%. And at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of last year, the 2-year, the German 2-year was trading at over 2%, Yeah, over like 2.9% less than the U.S. 10-year, and now that spread is down to 1.3%. And
Right.
here's the gig that you can see this. The day that Ueda came out and said we're not, which was the last BOJ meeting, said we're not ending yield curve control.
Right.
The the U.S. German 10-year spread dipped under a point, under 100 basis points. Since then, it's rallied 30 basis points. On the 2-year, it's rallied 40 basis points. And that while the euro also rallied a bit back up to 110, but now the euro is back to 108. And so there's this game that they're playing to manage yield spreads and the exchange rate of the euro and dollar, and they're doing this because they're trying to keep the price of oil low, and that's why Biden is continuing to drain the SPR.
Right.
And manipulate oil prices because they've got to get Europe set up to be able to get through this fucking winter without having everything explode. So it's all a big game of extend and pretend. And at some point, Ueda's going to go, you know what? We're giving up yield curve control. And when that happens, the ECB will have no other cover, no other rocks to hide on. And they'll either have to be seriously continuing to buy. I mean, I think they're literally buying U.S. 10-year to keep the U.S. 210 spread at historic, inversion in order to make everybody go, no, really, the U.S. is going to default. Oh, there's going to be a recession. No, don't put your money in the United States. Don't put your money in the United States when everybody wants to leave Europe. When all the money is desperately trying to leave Europe, but it doesn't know where to go. So it's frozen. Capital is just kind of sitting there going, where do I put my money? The U.S. is a mess. I got a guy who pooped his fucking pants in public. Ursula von der Leyen at the G7 is the one that gave the keynote fucking speech. And what did she say? European and Asian security is our primary focus. Asian security. NATO's new mission is Asian security. And that came directly from the head fucking Nazi's mouth.
Yeah. Japan's going to join NATO, which kind of brings us back to the Cold War thing. Did the war ever end in Asia? Japan and China fucking hate each other. The Koreas are still there.
Remember, go back to why was Abenomics even implemented in the first place? Because 6 months before Abe took power, the Chinese and the Japanese had signed an agreement to hold each other's bonds in each other's central bank as part of each other's foreign exchange reserve. They were doing this. The yen was trading at 75 to the dollar. I was writing articles. I was working with a guy in Vietnam at the time. And I literally wrote an article under his name saying the yen has the opportunity to become the regional reserve currency of Southeast Asia. And they were colonizing Vietnam. They were using the strong yen to buy up factories all over Ho Chi Minh City, Laos, Cambodia. They were putting their money everywhere. They were buying young, skilled, and educated labor in Vietnam to offset their fucking demographic crisis. And then the United States came in and threw the old regime out, put in Abe, who trashed the currency. And I remember Lew Rockwell saying, well, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan has always been a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA. He literally, I remember reading that article when Abe came to power, going, holy shit, he's so fucking right.
Right.
And then when Abe refused to, force Japan to get friggin' vaccinated, they killed him. Japan is the safest country in the world. I have a friend of mine, I have a patron, sent me a DM over the weekend. He was in Hiroshima this weekend. And he said the place was on complete lockdown. This is the safest country in the world with the most placid people in the world. What are they talking about? And they had the place literally a police state. And they held this thing in fucking Hiroshima, this goddamn death cult, where they would just symbolically remind everybody that if you don't do what we want you to do, we'll nuke you.
Yeah.
That was the story from this weekend.
I think on a side note, I think nuking Japan really just paid us dividends over the decades.
Oh,
that turned them from like a hyper masculine World War II power to like they just put out anime. Like that broke them. It's been 80 years and they're still broken. I think we should be nuking more small countries. Just as
Sound
an
like my friend.
aside. Sorry, just
You
as
sound like my friend John said. But I gotta say, I'm gonna go way off script here and tell you that.
Go for
No,
it.
I'll tell you this, dudes. There's a series. There's an anime series. You bring it up called Ghosts in the Shell Standalone Company. One of the greatest television shows ever made. And second season of SAC. They only did 2 full seasons of the show. The second season is both seasons are all about destabilizing Japanese politics for geopolitical purposes internally. The second season is absolutely about manipulating the media and creating a fake refugee crisis in order to start World War III.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Dude, it was. I keep going back to this and thinking to myself, oh my God, it's coming true.
Wait, in order to start World War III or stop?
Start.
Okay.
So another thing to kind of look at then is everything we're talking about, none of these projections really ever go past like 5 or 10 years. So just if being really like 100,000-foot view, is that really all history has ever been? And we're just seeing it in a more intricate manner now. That it's just this massive, crazy, like blindfolded running around on a unicycle putting out fires, and there's really nothing controlling it. There's some people have plans and there are temporary factions, but that's really all geopolitics is. It's just this insane nut house of trying to put out 10 fires with 9 fire extinguishers, all while holding a press conference. It kind of makes me feel better, honestly.
It actually is a lot of that, Tom.
I think to me that's very positive news.
It actually is. There are people.
Than us?
Well,
Yeah,
no,
they're
it's just
stupider
because
than us?
instead of the idea that it's like this top-down, hyper-educated and control Machiavellian
yeah.
planners, but rather it's just, dude,
Right.
everyone's just barely getting the kids to school on time. That's kind of that's a little more. It's kind of heartwarming. You're like, oh, it's
That
all
is actually
retarded.
that is
Yeah.
exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
They all have their plans. I always say, Tommy,
That's very
these
relieving.
are they think they're these are the people who think they run the world,
Yeah.
not the people who actually run the world. They move levers, they do all sorts of things, but they cannot control secondary and tertiary and quaternary effects. And it's those secondary, tertiary, and quaternary effects, second order, third order, fourth order effects, that are the things that destabilize all this.
That run the world. Yeah.
That actually run the world. Yeah.
So you can.
What do you think? What do you think, Alex?
I think I agree, but also you might add that they are staggeringly stupid, and I'm not.
No, they're retarded.
I don't. Like it's funny, but it's not even funny because it's for real. I mean, just think that this same kind of lineup of permanent power in Washington, what was it? Barely 20 years ago, they wrote that very pretentious, very overambitious project for the new American century.
Well, actually,
I mean,
it's about 22 years.
It's been barely 20 years, and I mean, like, talk about opposite outcomes and unintended consequences. I mean, like, if you wanted to bungle it this badly, you would have to think like, like if somebody gave you $1 million in a brokerage account and said, like, you have to lose this money as quickly as you can, it's not so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not that easy, like you would try to do stupid thing and then some of it would make you money.
Yeah.
But these people managed to take like the world's sole superpower and destroy it in the space of 20 years.
Yeah, because it was intentional.
I mean,
they're not bungling idiots. They know what they're doing.
Oh no, I think they're idiots.
I think it's a mix of. I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of both.
Idiots. I mean, when you get into the details of what they do and how they're doing it, they cock up at absolutely everything that matters, and that's actually a very encouraging thing.
I want to clarify because the world is run by
pedophiles,
sociopaths.
So
No, hear me out. Hear me out. It's not going to be your typical conversation, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're a sociopath doesn't mean you're smart. So you've got a million sociopaths running the world, and they're sociopathic. They've got no, they've got no amygdala, whatever that part of the brain is. They can't possibly care about anything other than what's in front of their nose. Now, within that sector of these million sociopaths, 5% of them are really fucking smart. I mean, look, where I grew up, you had plenty of, you had guys that were robbing houses, okay? They were sociopaths. They got caught. They went to jail. You had guys that were low-level gangsters. They were sociopaths. Some of them got caught. And then as you went up the ladder, it was like, okay, now you're on Wall Street. They're sociopaths. Most of them don't get caught. Now you're in politics. So I think the world is run by a million sociopathic idiots. And of that million, 5% really know what's going on. And here's my proof. I mean, it's not even proof. From central banking point of view, when you hear all the central bankers speak, now if you're in tune to it, like I try to be, I can tell who is just mouthing, who's the minion, just mouthing the sociopath's rhetoric, and who actually knows they're full of shit and is just trying to get out of it. Anyway, so that's what I was trying to say, Tommy. That, like, there are some people, there's a subculture of the subculture that has a brain. And the problem is even they can't fucking control the idiots working for them. So every 20 years, it goes to shit, right? I mean, what were we doing? We were congratulating ourselves after the USSR fell, and then we pissed it away.
Yep.
Right?
Which is why we need a new one.
That's right. Yep. It's all about cycles. We need to have a little bit of creative depth. So why can't we pick cities to nuke? Can we do that?
No, there's not going to be any nukes. It's going to be the same thing as the Cold War. It's going to be
No, but I mean, you're hypothetical. The dividends that Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's all. Can we all just be neocons here? Like,
so we need. Oh, so we need a nuke. Is Taipei in Taiwan? Is Taipei in Taiwan? That they used to have the world's tallest building back in the early 2000s. Taipei 101. And we need to nuke them. So
yeah.
Taiwan will become our cucks, and then they'll serve us for 80 years. It's not big enough. You don't want someone that's actually going to punch back. Can't nuke China.
Okay, you can't.
Russia.
Well, you can't nuke Taiwan because if you do that, the Chinese will lose their minds. It has to be the. If I could be neocons for a minute, and this is, I don't want to be a neocon. I still want to be an anti-neocon. I just want to. Right. I think Medvedev is right, and we should just just take out London. But
it's an island.
This is not me being a neocon. This is like me trying to solve the problem.
I'm sorry.
I think if
no,
you
what
want to be
Mark Armstrong made the point that you nuke Kiev to end all.
I've been saying that for a year. If Biden campaigned on I'm nuking Kiev, I would phone bank.
No. Putin nukes Kiev.
Oh, I've been saying Biden.
And then, if not, again, no one wants this to happen. But fine, Tommy, you can live in that world. It's like there comes a point where the thing that has to be dealt with here is that the neoconservative mindset is that if they're not pushing back, they're bullies. The neoconservatives are very simple. They're just bullies. Okay, and as long as you don't bloody a bully's nose, he'll think you're weak. So you bloody his nose in such a way that he can't respond. Because if at this point, this is what they're, but at the same time, this is kind of what they want, right? They want the Russians to go off half-cocked. The Brits have been trying to manipulate events in Ukraine to get the Russian hardliners that we spoke about earlier to weep into power, right? And do something really dumb, and then we'll have the moral high ground to go in and take out the Russians the way we want.
That's what the Russian, I forget who was saying, was it Medvedev who's saying he thinks that the UK final plan would be a tactical nuke in Ukraine because they need to draw Russians really off sides. We're blaming on Russia or something like that.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, and Medvedev has made this point. He's also just said And I think not. And this is, I don't take him. I don't take him seriously when he says this. I don't take him literally when I say that. I think he means this
Right.
metaphorically, which is very simply, we know who's giving the orders.
Yeah.
We know who's giving the orders, and we know what we would have to do to get rid of those who are giving those orders. And that means, if you guys don't stop it, we know how to flood London. And he said that. I don't think that he wants to nuke London, but if you want a quote unquote, I hate to use the term, final solution to this problem, that's where it is, because he knows where this is coming from. He knows where these orders are being given, but their hands are tied because they also know what the outcome, the fallout, again, poor choice of words, would be from that. Okay, so it's like it's the knock-on effects, and none of us want this to spiral out of control, because then the whole thing just goes ballistic, again, to use a bad term. So, like, sorry, I mean, these are the terms that we've been these are this is what we're dealing with here. So it's this dance of the Russians having to continually take a punch in the mouth, continually take a punch in the mouth, continually take a punch in the mouth, until there is no other option than to beat the Ukrainians militarily, which is why they've been creating the Bakhmut meat grinder in order to degrade the West in every way, politically, economically, financially, militarily, to continue fighting this war until the day comes when now they've set the stage for when they can then run the table on what's left of the remnant of the Ukrainian army. And the question about that is going to be, when the mud dries in central Ukraine and the swamplands across from Mykolaiv to Odessa are reasonable to traverse, that's when the Russians can engage in maneuver warfare again. They can't do so as of right now. Ukraine was was too strong a year ago. Now, when they never got a full freeze in Kiev or in the Donbass this winter, McGregor's made this point multiple times. But now they're bombing the bridge connections between Moldova and Odessa. They're taking out the ability of NATO to supply Odessa from Romania and Bulgaria. And because of that, the stage is now set for when the time is right, that will be Russia's next play. And once they take Odessa, it's over. The other thing they were waiting for was the Turkish election. Because with Erdogan surviving, now Turkey is still independent for all intents and purposes. If Erdogan had lost, and he's not going to lose the runoff, by the way, because the hard right guy who got 5% just through his people, through his support behind Erdogan. Erdogan will win the runoff. Turkey is going to continue to effectively position itself as an independent, but nominally outside of the West sphere of influence. If the other guy had won, Turkey was going to be fast tracked into the EU.
Isn't this kind of symbolic at just how prideful and hubris filled our plans are? That if we're talking about how this war in Ukraine is going to be the negotiation table for the future of the world reserve currency and thus the global hegemon, and we're waiting on this attack by Russia, which itself is predicated upon mud drying. Isn't this kind of absurd that it all is based on mud drying? Like, have we really left the caves, or are we just still dumb chimpanzees? It all comes down to the mud drying. Is this not symbolic of, like, take a step back, like, you don't control anything? Like, that's kind of humbling. It's the entire new, like, comes down to the mud drying. Is that not
the rest of the century of history comes down to when the mud in central Ukraine
we
dries.
bombed Nagasaki instead of Kyoto because Truman said, "I want you to have visual confirmation," and there were clouds over Kyoto that day. Like,
really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they flew over it like 10 times and they couldn't see it. So they're like, all right, so just kind of flip of the coin, we just nuked another. Like that, it's kind of hilarious. It's kind of humbling that like there were clouds, and that's why you know the name Nagasaki and not really Kyoto. So we're waiting on the mud to dry in some Nazi infested shithole in Eastern Europe to determine the rest of the century. That's kind of humbling. There's really no bigger thought on that. That doesn't go anywhere. I was just making it up.
Right. It is. Anybody else has to want to add to that?
What do you think, Vince?
I think we should nuke London.
No, I am on board with that. I think
small nuke.
A little one.
No, I mean, look, guys.
A little baby one.
I want to tie it all together, right? It's the Watchmen. We need aliens to come down that are going to, we need to tell them to look. I mean, it sounds like it's masturbation or nihilism. It's not. Like Truman and MacArthur had this conversation.
Yeah.
The Korean War.
Yeah.
Let's nuke the 38th parallel.
Yeah.
That'll teach them a lesson, and we'll keep them separate from us for a while. I mean, this conversation is happening again somewhere.
Yeah.
Just a tactical go. So if you drop it in Ukraine, then it could be bad, right? If you drop it in Asia, then Japan might get nervous, China might attack. You drop it in London, I mean, I'm a New Yorker, right? I mean, it kind of helps, right?
Yeah. Move the finance. That
Not
could be a
big
boon.
nuke, small nuke,
Little baby one.
just not even. You know what? I want to have. What's the opposite of a smart bomb? I want to have a nuke that keeps the people alive but destroys the city. I want one of those. Can we make
you want the opposite? You want the opposite of a neutron bomb?
Well, that's
not smart bomb, a neutron bomb.
Well, that
I want the one that destroys. It's gonna.
That doesn't exist. But go on.
It'll be like.
How would you destroy physical structures? But not
the Kinjals.
It'll be like fertilizer, right? I mean,
is that what did you say, Alex?
No, that's exactly the Kinjals. It doesn't have to be nuclear.
Kinjal, the hypersonic.
Because if you hit a couple of places in London with Kinjals, it's not nuclear. It's conventional. It can have conventional warheads, but still completely devastate. Let's say MI6 headquarters, MI5 headquarters, GCHQ headquarters. If you want to get creative, maybe the parliament.
We might legally be recording terrorism right now. But that being said, I'm with you. I think
I'm just saying it's not necessary.
I'm kidding. I don't give a shit.
The nuke explodes.
No, but the nuke holds more. It holds more symbolic conscious power.
Yeah, I think anything hitting the symbolic power is what you hit.
No, I think he's right now. The hypersonic missile, and then we have some sort of a CGI effect that creates a mushroom cloud, right? I mean,
there you go.
Be a lot of
it's a deep fake. It's a deep fake of a nuke.
What if you nuked? What if you nuked Pripyat? It's already a denied territory, and it would make no difference.
What is that?
That's where Chernobyl is.
Oh, there you go.
In Ukraine. No one can live there anyway. You just nuke it to show that you are willing to set one off.
And a hush comes over the crowd because
I would rather let's get off of this line of and the reason is because, and it's not because it's not just because I'm uncomfortable, but because this is where we don't want this conflict.
Well, of course, we're fucking around. Nobody wants anyone to get nuked.
But the reason I thought of it is because Medvedev had been talking about the UK possibly escalating it to that level if this went on too long.
This conversation is happening, Vince. You're completely right about that.
It's pathetic.
This conversation is happening in other places. There's no argument there. They're trying desperately to figure out how they can get this. They just want to look like the good guys. They have a pathological need to claim the moral high ground.
Right. So the Davos crowd is, if you want to look at it in terms of personality types, in war, Davos is passive aggressive. Or
absolutely.
Davos, right? They're we're constantly trying to draw Russia off sides.
Yes.
That's what.
And Russia's just going, that's nice. You can You can do a hard count all you want. You're not pulling our guys. We have too much discipline for this. As long as Putin's in power,
Right.
because Putin understands this. And one of the things I want to go back to something that Alex pointed out right at the beginning of the thing, which is this whole idea that Putin is a WF puppet and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We're in a place today where the amount of malinformation, disinformation, overlapping psyops are so deep, right? And we have a proliferation now of new commentators and, frankly, people with not enough experience with these ideas to be able to separate connection with reality, right? So these people are in the reality creation business. Go back to the quote that's attributed to Dick Cheney, but it was really Karl Rove, or I think it's attributed to Karl Rove, but it's really Dick Cheney or somebody. It doesn't really matter who said it. We are in the reality creation business. We create reality, and you're forever chasing yesterday's reality while we create the new reality. Well, the reality of today is, these are ideas that are seeded into the narrative that don't exist. These are all standalone complexes. This is not reality. So everybody who's ever been placed on a WEF website page as a quote unquote global young leader, like, now has been tainted with the guilt by association brush, even if they never agreed to have their name put on the WEF Young World Global Leader page. Tulsi Gabbard is a perfect example of this. And yet today, he is still fighting this years after having said, no, I never talked to these people. They invited me once, they put me on the page, and now everybody uses it. It's the same thing with Putin. Like, who they were or what they were 20 years ago is not relevant to who they are now. You're assuming that nothing has ever changed, and it's just this 9-year-old argument, this 9-year-old view of the world, or pre-adolescent view of the world, that once a bad guy, or once in bed with the wrong guys, always in bed with the wrong guy. And we're living in that world today, and it's really muddying the analysis in the waters because no one has any idea of what's actually going on. And I'm still fighting this shit, and it bothers me to no end because people who should know better are continuing to act as water carriers for these fucking assholes who are literally feeding bad information into the zeitgeist. Doesn't matter if we're talking about 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination or any of these things. And you have to realize that this is why Kinjal up the ass of MI6 and GCHQ is literally the end of the war, because that's where 90% of these fucking things come from.
Could this be a whole missile gap scenario or a bomber gap, talking about the Kinjal? Because in 2010, we shot the DARPA-created HTV-2, the Hypersonic Test Vehicle 2. It went Mach 20. It went like 4 times faster than the Kinjal. That was 12 years ago. So
we have hypersonic missiles.
So that's my point. It's like, is this just another missile gap, a bomber gap that we always knew, but we find out 10 years later, oh, the Soviets didn't actually have that. Yeah, but it's the defense contract. We thought that Khrushchev was building 500 or 600 a year, and then we found out they were building 4, not 400,
right.
4. Like, right. We thought they had more bombers. They pulled some fucking some road like Coyote and Roadrunner shit. They just recorded the same bombers looping around the city, right? Is it possible we're just falling hook, line, and sinker for another missile gap?
That's war.
I don't know.
If I can, that's the Cold War concept that you're
exactly
talking about. Right.
Yes.
So the missile gap and the space race, we have to catch up with the Soviets.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the missile gap. And by the way, here I'll throw this at you because this dovetails into that. The whether it be the Davos Americans or the conservative Americans, for lack of a better word, the U.S. is now sticking with its ideology, right? And the East is sticking with its ideology, very materialistic, and the U.S. is very, we'll call it woke and progressive. But we need to, we're doing this right now. We're rearming, we're reshoring, because it's a mercantilist move. We're gonna start building domestically, et cetera, et cetera. And the war that's shaping up now, the gap, which by the way, missiles, yes, space, it's all going to be it sounds like I'm talking about something out of a 70s movie, but it's all computer chips, right? So we're going to restrict them from getting intellectual capital in the form of technology for as long as we can, and we're going to rebuild it, and we're going to be in a race with Russia. The missiles are an example of that. Technology. What's the other thing you were talking about? You mentioned there's something else that Russia is ahead of us on.
Radars,
Alex, radar.
surface to
Radar,
air,
that's it, the
missile
radar, right?
defense.
Exactly. So those are reasons to have a Cold War. Those are reasons to spend on rearming and reshoring and drilling for lithium. We're not drilling for oil anymore because that's bad, because it hurts the earth. But now Exxon's drilling for lithium. They announced that yesterday.
Yeah.
They're drilling for lithium. It's all
It's setting up for the next Cold War. So some great power is going to go into the biggest lithium deposits in the world, Afghanistan, and we're going to go, oh my God, we got to go stop them. But we've already preemptively armed the rebels by just leaving them a bunch of military equipment, knowing that China or Russia would probably be invading them by 2030.
That's totally true. I did hear. I read the time we pulled out of Afghanistan. They also announced that Japan found a huge lithium deposit off. I don't know if it's off their coast or on their coast. So maybe we pulled back from Afghanistan and left the guns there as a.
I think they found a huge deposit up here in Maine.
Yeah.
Or New Hampshire or something.
Well, but again, I think the reshoring argument has more to do with again. Let's back up a little bit here, and I want to bring Alex in on this, which is, look, what if the globalists are losing?
All right.
Okay, now if the globalists don't have control over the United States, and Biden, for the most part, part of what he's doing is this whole reshoring, this re-onshoring thing. It's because the new Cold War, I've been saying the new Iron Curtain is going to be the international North-South transport corridor, right? The trade corridor that runs from St. Petersburg to Chabahar in the Indian Ocean to south of Iran, right? Multimodal trade corridor, north and south across Asia. All you need now is Pakistan to ensure that you're going east-west overland route, and now you have the whole Belt and Road, Mackinder Heartland theory. It collapses. The world island is now one big unit. All the things we talked about at the beginning of the conversation. Powell's meeting with the head of the PBOC for the first time since 2020.
Right.
Jamie Dimon just went to China last week.
I know. Don't get me started on that shit. Yes.
No. Jamie Dimon went to China last week. Again, this is about negotiating the terms of the divorce.
Right.
It's not that hard, folks. The good guys in the United States are winning. The sovereigntists. I don't like to call them the good guys. They're actually the sovereigntists. The Americans who want America to back off the empire for European oligarch reasons, right? For their benefit. This is what's starting to happen, and what we're seeing on Capitol. Why this is actually not about the mud in Ukraine. It's about the debt ceiling fight here in the United States. Because if Biden wins this debt ceiling fight, then all opposition on Capitol Hill to what's going on with their loss of monetary control here in the U.S. will collapse. Yellen and Biden will be able to run the table. They're going to have to reverse all the QT. They're going to have to send interest rates back towards the zero bound and all of this shit. And they're going to restart the entire program. And Dimon came out today and said, I think you better get ready for 6% or higher. He reminded everybody the Fed has no control over the long end of the yield curve. They have control over the overnight rate. And then their power lessens the farther you go out the yield curve. So why is Yellen trying to do yield curve control? She's trying to undermine Fed policy by trying to grasp control of the short end of the yield curve. So this debt ceiling fight, I think, is your nexus point in history. And it's the thing we can't see beyond. We don't know how it's going to end. But if it ends quote unquote in the sovereign's favor, then all of these other conflicts start to resolve themselves, and the divorce terms can be they can start to be negotiated properly, right? And this is the way I see the game board laying out at this point. Alex, what do you think?
I don't disagree with anything you said. I'll just go back a second to the hypersonic thing and the missile gap. The gap is real. The West doesn't have hypersonic missiles.
Really? Wow, I'm totally naive. All right, it's crazy.
So there may have been, I don't know what there may have been. Is it in the outer space? Is it Rocketdyne tested some new fuel that actually could propel a missile at 20 Mach or whatever? Is there a specific weapons system, a specific missile? Is it deployed anywhere? Has it ever hit anything? The answer is no, 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 and no. It's not there. The problem is not making things run hypersonic. The problem is controlling them. The problem is that the hypersonic trajectory through the atmosphere, so not in the void and not in the vacuum, in the atmosphere, creates such high temperature on the surface of the missile that it makes them disintegrate. And only the Russians have the alloys that can withstand those temperatures. And so they are the only ones with the technology to actually control these things and to deliver them with pinpoint precision and specific concrete weapon systems that exist, that are tested, that are deployed, and that are actually hitting shit.
All right.
So that's a real gap. That's not an imaginary gap. And again, the most optimistic projections on the Western side is that they might be able to close that gap in the next 5 or 10 years. Maybe.
Real or fake gap, they're still going to make a lot of money.
Well, they are going to make a lot of money, but the problem is that money is going to be buying less and less and less stuff.
No, I got you.
By the way, we're the USSR in 1989. That's what I feel like now.
Right.
We're talking about a gap that we have to fill, right? We're talking about an ascendant empire. We're talking about ideological conflict, and we're talking about a West that's towards a socialist Marxist mentality, even while the East embraces it's authoritarian, but it's a capitalist mentality. It's the whole fucking world is flipped.
Okay, excellent. I mean, this is so much food for thought, and it's just perfect. So, first of all, the fact that the United States is not the USSA is excellent news, because one model of governance that is pathogenic and unsustainable has got to implode on itself. And then the United States can take a different direction. Same as the USSR. I mean, remember where Russia was 20 years ago?
Yeah.
It was a disaster. It was one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It was a rust bucket. Everything was falling apart. The nation itself was falling apart. And there was no rule of law. I mean, a complete disaster. It was kind of like Ukraine today.
It's like
and look where it is. Look where it is now. That it took a different turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a, and then when we go back to closing gaps, the United States merely needs to defend its shore and its borders. It doesn't need to keep up an empire worldwide, pay for 800 military bases for whose benefit exactly? Not for the American people's benefits. It's for the occult oligarchy's benefits. And so once this system falls, as the USSR did, which was the last empire that collapsed, the United States has a big opportunity to just go back to its Republican roots and become a prosperous nation again. And so, you don't need to close any gaps. All you need to do is defend your borders. And the United States is eminently defensible. You know, like Russia is not.
Yeah.
Russia has 400 miles of swamp to Moscow. There's no mountain ranges, there's no oceans, there's no big rivers that are uncrossable. Russia is very vulnerable. The United States is not.
Yeah.
And it's relatively easy to defend US shores and US borders if somebody chose to prioritize that rather than developing systems that can hit Burkina Faso and St. Petersburg and freaking Santiago, Chile.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm with you.
And
We should
not
go.
only that, but you know, the defense budget doesn't have to be $1 trillion. It can be 50 billion and be completely effective.
Yep.
If it isn't like a whole massive conveyor belt for plundering money from the American people into a very narrow segment, that's the military industrial complex and the banking establishment that controls it.
Have any of you guys read a book called The Grand Chessboard?
Yeah.
Right?
It's big.
Okay. All right, so you know that book, right? All right, so there's a map where it takes, there's one of the maps where I'm just reading it for the first time now. And there's a map where it takes the world and reverses it, or puts it upside down. And it's basically when you get rid of your prejudices in terms of land masses, you realize that, you know, all the things that you're saying about the US being more easily defendable, I should say, and but the heart of everything in Europe and Eurasia, actually Eurasia is the big landmass. What I'm getting at is what you're describing is, and I'm saying this because we haven't met before, so I'm saying this respectfully, is a fucking fantasy, and I want it to happen. But here's what I mean: if we were to pull in and go Monroe Doctrine, you know, we're gonna drill our own natural resources. We're going to pull our empire in. We're going to shrink the empire, which, by the way, is another book talks about that, how empires don't collapse anymore. They shrink and they pull in the reins. So if we did that constructively, we have pissed off so many people with hypersonic missiles now.
I actually, Vince, the thing is, I actually think that having done this now for close to 10 years and publicly now for 6, the more I speak to people around the world, the more they want the United States to go back to that model. And to the model that we just described, Alex, you and Alex described. Yeah. Because they realize that they've always looked to the US as a legal entity as an aspirational thing. Right. Which is government that is subordinate to the people as opposed to the other way around. And we are still basically the only country on the planet that has that in writing, not de facto, but de jure. Okay. And that's what we want. That's what the world wants. The world wants the United States to balance its budget, bring, end the hubris, end the empire, and they will, I'm telling you, many sins will be forgiven.
No, oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, no question about that, because like people around the world are not dumb. They understand. Like I can tell you that when Donald Trump was running in 2020, it was everywhere. It was the front page news every day, and I promise you that most people in most places were absolutely cheering for Donald Trump with perfect understanding what was at stake, and wanting the United States to come back into the fold of nations as a, as a moral, as an industrial leader, as the shining city on the hill, which the United States is still, in spite of the fact that it's in the grip of this death cult, the United States still is one of the most radical experiments in the history of humanity, and in a positive way.
It's the only revolution that's still working.
Sorry?
the rule, like Tom was talking about, the rule of law. Most countries are homogenous, or if they're not homogenous, they're culturally homogenous. The U.S. is not, and the rule of law is what we need to keep ourselves together. And so that's the example you're talking about. So
right, yeah, but I think that's a question of leadership. That can be a relatively simple change.
right.
And I think that then what seems like a fantasy from this snapshot of reality,
Right.
becomes completely achievable. Again, like you look at the difference between Germany in 1946 and Germany in, say, 1990s, Russia in 1999 and Russia today. These transformations do happen, and they happen very, very rapidly. Very rapidly. Historically, 20 years is a relatively short time period, but very, very radical things change. And then, like the last food of thought you gave me with what you said before is when you say that these other regimes are tyrannical. If you read history correctly, meaning if you read between the lines of the bullshit that the winners write, the tyrants are actually always the reformers. Since the day of Julius Caesar was killed by the oligarchy, but the bankers and the military-industrial complex, because he was trying to re-enfranchise the Roman citizen.
Yep.
And the people who killed him, the Ciceros and Brutuses and all these people, they were the occult oligarchy.
Yep.
And
these leaders, these figureheads that you're talking about, they're the agents of change. They're the accelerants that get us to fix shit.
Yeah.
And the Strauss
and you also have a very important legal inversion, meaning that in systems like Russia and China, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping really are top of the pecking order. And so people understand where the buck stops. In Western democracies, since the day of Magna Carta, when the kings were castrated politically, you have a figurehead which is not real, meaning like the sovereign is not really the person in power. There's a power behind the throne, and they are the ones who are actually wielding power. Then you have like a figurehead that people see, and like you have the pomp and circumstance and the coronations and all this, and then you have the democracy where people are just kind of being strung along, like now you elect the left side and then they screw you, and then you are like, oh, we're gonna elect these other ones, and then they screw you, and then and so you're constantly in this cycle of waiting for the next cycle when you're going to get the right people in power, and then they're going to address your grievances, and then when they don't, then you're going to elect the next ones. And so for as long as I've been alive, which is 53 years, and maybe paying attention to politics for the last 35 years, the American people have consistently voted for anti-war candidates.
Yep.
And for 35 years that I've been paying attention, they've been just getting more and more and more and more war.
Yep.
And supposedly this is democracy. I guarantee you that if Russian people wanted no more war, that they would get peace. And you can see that today, the Chinese are driving peace deals around Eurasian landmass, whereas Britain is running around panicked that peace is breaking over, and they're trying to scuttle it everywhere.
So isn't the whole thing income versus upstarts?
Sorry?
Not to simplify it, but the incumbents, the West, the people in power want to keep their position, and the East are the upstarts. And I say that rising power versus ebbing power. So what I mean is the West just doesn't want to give up their position, and so those people in power are going to do everything they can to at least slow down the East's rise.
Yeah.
You're Your comment,
Absolutely.
like,
Absolutely, but like the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union didn't want to give up power either.
right.
Didn't help them much.
No, it
Right.
didn't.
That's we need a crisis to get that though. The U.S. needs that kind of 90s Russian economic crisis to
enter Jerome Powell, gray champion in the Strauss and Howe model.
Yeah, and I think, and I honestly
I'm serious.
think, okay, because when Vladimir Putin came to power, there was a conspiracy. I mean, if you try to figure out how the hell he got into the Kremlin, it's really weird. It's
he
really
bombed those
weird.
apartments.
And I mean, there was a certain segment of the KGB that kind of recruited him, found him, probably vetted him very, very extensively, set him up to throw a couple of curveballs to persuade people like Tony Blair and Henry Kissinger that he was going to be their guy, and Russian oligarchs like Boris Berezovsky and Khodorkovsky, and they all think they were getting their guy. They all think they were getting their next bastard who was going to just be their figurehead, and they were going to run the show. And then it didn't turn out that way. And I am pretty convinced that there is a similar conspiracy in the United States. There are people who understand what's going on, and they understand that they're not going to prevail by going to the public and saying like, well, we need a better leader, but they are preparing the terrain. They might fail, but they are preparing the terrain for a sharp U-turn.
I see the same thing, Alex. I call it the counter-revolution. I see a counter-revolutionary forces working within the United States, and the key is you start with reform of the monetary system, because the United States monetary system and the Federal Reserve is at the heart of all of this crap.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely.
This is where it starts, and then monetary reform begets. If you've got the Fed and the bankers, then have the ability to put the pressure on the politicians to hold the line, because they look, you guys are going to be like, I've been saying this, like, why did Elon Musk get Twitter? Okay, why did he get Twitter? They wanted him to get Twitter in order to get to the DM. They wanted all the private DMs and how these people were coordinating. But why was he even allowed to buy Twitter? Because someone allowed him to buy Twitter. It went from, I'm going to tie this thing up in court. We're going to tie Musk up in court for 9 months or a year over the valuation of the company, to I'm buying Twitter on Friday. It doesn't fucking just happen like that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's unfucking believable. This guy was, they have him tied up, and the whole 9 yards, and then all of a sudden there was no buy Twitter on Friday. He had to have Twitter before the election. Okay, they blow up FTX the day of the fucking election, dude. They start blowing up the fucking stable coins, all of the fucking Davos stable coins that summer. Like, this I documented every bit of this fucking fight all the way down the line. Every fucking bit of it.
And Elon Musk, his practically antithesis to Google, and his main client is the Pentagon.
Yeah.
So there's that conspiracy.
Right. Oh,
in the back.
Yeah.
He says,
you don't launch 10,000 satellites
without.
without
This Eric Schmidt and then these assholes. We're gonna empower our guy.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, I've been watching this thing play itself out. I'm like, it's all just playing out. I had a guy on my podcast the summer of 2022, before the midterms, a guy by the name of Bill Faywell. Had him on the podcast twice, and his specialty is revolution. He has a theory of revolutions, the 4 stages of revolution, and all that. I had him on the podcast, and Bill doesn't do a lot of interviews because he's mostly, blacklisted and all this stuff. But he just reached out to me, and he said, Tom, you got everything right except for this, this, and this. I'm like, really? Let's discuss it on the podcast. And the podcast is similar way, like, let's do this. And I just sat there kind of in awe of listening to him talk about the stages. And he's like, yeah, this is typical third stage stuff. Where we are. Bill's a fascinating guy to talk to. Tommy, you'd love talking to Bill. I should put you two in cahoots, in contact, because I think once he started, we were talking about that. It then became very obvious to me. Okay, this is how the midterms are going to turn out, and then this is what's going to happen after that. This is how they're going to respond, and then this next stage of it is going to be really kind of ugly and vicious. But the counter revolution is starting. It may not succeed, but it will set the stage for whatever comes next. Okay, and so go back to the point that Alex made earlier about Dear Love, the former MI6 head, saying they're scared to death that they're going to lose the election in 2024, which is why they want to put Trump in jail. Okay? So he can't run. And it's also why they're trying to pump up DeSantis to get him to run so that he gets removed from the stage. Okay? There's all this stuff that's happening that once you see it from that perspective, you can see every move in front of you. But the real moves are the Fed is going to continue raising rates until it breaks these people. The war has been declared between Wall Street and San Francisco. All these shitbag San Francisco fucking crappy super regional banks that all they did was make market loans to billionaires for their third yacht and their fourth mansion. All those banks are the ones that are being destroyed. First Republic, Signature, Silicon Valley. What are they most known for?
And they
funding bad fucking, either funding bad, a horrible fucking tech company, bad startup ideas that were only profitable underserved, to launder fucking offshore euro dollars back into the United States to destabilize the country, sideline, to destroy the media, sideline conservatives, sideline sovereigntists, pay for the invasion on the border, pay for source CAs and tranny bathrooms and all the rest of this rotten nonsense to make us turn us into fucking self-hating, self-flagellating monkeys who would be happy for civil war, who would there's a whole contingent of Americans who are just like, let's just destroy the whole fucking thing. Let's start over again. I'm like, no. That's exactly what they fucking want. It's a civil war all over again.
Yeah. That's exactly what they want. That would be the greatest Christmas gift to the oligarchy of anything. And I think that, just for the benefit of your viewers, the interview with Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, I think it was done over the weekend, and it's on Times Radio. So if you go on YouTube, you can find it. I think it's extremely instructive because all roads lead to London. London is driving this. Biden administration is simply their bitch, and once Biden administration is out, there's going to be very, very significant changes. Anyway, gents, please forgive me, but I have to jump because in literally 3 minutes there's John Mersheimer presentation that I have to attend.
I'll be honest with you guys. I'm getting ready. I need to milk a goat, so it's the same kind of thing. I think it's probably a good idea to like wrap it up for a little bit here. I hate to like do the same thing, but I mean, I'd love to do this again. This was fun. I'm glad you all got to meet. Like these are the three guys. These are the two guys I wanted to get to meet badly, because I thought this would just be a hoot of conversation.
That was great. That was great fun.
There's topics we can talk on more, like
absolutely,
East-West ideology split.
I'd love to.
And to remind everybody, Alex and I are going to be in Edmonton doing a live show on Sean Newman's, hosted by Sean Newman, on June 10th. That's going to be lit. It'll be fun. Alex and I actually get to meet in person. We're going to do a live show podcast, and we'll do this again. I don't like to do 3 ways on my podcast because it's hard enough to do audio that way. But Tommy, we'd love to do this again. So.
Yeah, I'd love. Thanks for coming on here. I hope it wasn't too.
Yeah.
And for the record, I don't actually want anybody to get nuked. I don't.
For the record, neither do I.
Well, I'm not sure about you.
You
looked a little earnest when you said it. I was joking. I saw the devil behind your eyes.
Okay, Vince.
I must confess.
Right.
I must confess. I did a paper in high school on MacArthur and Truman, and I took MacArthur's side.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I have a little bit of neocon in me.
Yeah,
know,
it's okay.
Well,
okay.
it's
all right.
We're all
know,
seduced
reverse-
by a nuclear flash.
A reverse neutron bomb will be fine.
It's okay.
Okay.
Well, with that,
Y'all be well. Thanks,
gentlemen,
folks.
thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you
Alex,
guys.
Vince, it was
That
nice
was
to meet you
fun.
guys. I'd love to do it again. Everybody,
Good.
thank you for watching.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.